In the vast chamber of the Galactic Concordance, where the air hummed with the subtle vibrations of translation fields, Ambassador Lyra Voss of the Krellian Collective adjusted her neural implant. The chamber was a marvel of interstellar engineering, a domed expanse of iridescent crystal that shifted colors to match the moods of its occupants, currently a muted gray-blue under the weight of impending decision. Representatives from over 100 worlds sat in tiered seats, their forms as varied as the stars, the tentacled elders of the Vexery, the crystalline shards of the Lumora, and the hovering orbs of the Sylph Collective. But all eyes turned to the human delegation, isolated in their lower alcove like a peculiar exhibit. Captain Elias Kane leaned back in his chair, his weathered face etched with the lines of too many frontier patrols. At 47, he was the oldest human in the room, his dark hair streaked with silver from years under harsh colony suns. He wasn't a diplomat by trade, more a spacer who'd hauled cargo and fought off pirates, but Earth had thrust him into this role after their last envoy's untimely demise in a Vexery negotiation gone sour. Beside him sat Dr. Mira Singh, sharp-eyed and precise, her fingers drumming a silent rhythm on her data pad. She was the brains, a xenobiologist who'd spent decades decoding alien psyches, her optimism a counterweight to Elias's ingrained caution. Their third, Lieutenant Tara Ruiz, paced the narrow space behind them, her compact frame coiled with energy. Young and fiery, with a scar across her cheek from a skirmish on Vega Prime, she believed in humanity's right to a seat at the table, no matter the cost. The presiding chair, a hulking Thraxian named Gorvith, rumbled through his translator, his voice like grinding stone. The matter before us is the petition from the United Worlds Alliance to revoke Earth's provisional membership. Grounds: repeated violations of Concordance protocols on resource extraction and territorial expansion. Ambassador Voss, you have the floor. Lyra Voss rose, her elongated neck arching gracefully. The Krellians were a patient species, evolved from deep-sea predators, and she embodied that calm, inexorable. Esteemed delegates, she began, her words flowing like cool currents, Earth's actions threaten the balance. Their mining operations on Epsilon Eridani have depleted aquifers vital to 3 allied systems. Their colony ships encroach on neutral zones, sowing discord. We propose excision, removal of Earth's voting rights and isolation from trade routes. A quarantine, if you will, to protect the greater harmony. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elias felt the familiar knot in his gut tighten. He'd seen this coming. Earth's rapid growth had always chafed against the older empires. Humans multiplied like weeds, innovated with reckless abandon, and refused to bow to the galaxy's unwritten hierarchies. He glanced at Mira, who met his eyes with a subtle nod, her mind already racing through counterarguments. Tara stopped pacing, leaning over the console. They're painting us as the villains again, she whispered fiercely. But we fixed the Eridani mess. Our tech stabilized those aquifers. They just don't want us catching up. Save it for the rebuttal, Elias murmured, his voice low and steady. He straightened, signaling readiness as Gorvith called for Earth's response. Mira spoke first, her tone measured, projecting holograms of restored ecosystems from their data core. The incidents cited were errors, not malice. Humanity offers solutions, not subjugation. Our ingenuity has benefited the Concordance. Advances in fusion drives, medical nanites shared freely. Revocation would be short-sighted. But the chamber's atmosphere thickened. The Vexery tentacles twitched in disapproval. The Lumora shards pulsed a warning red. Lyra Voss watched impassively as delegate after delegate rose in support of the motion. Whispers of arrogant primates and uncontrolled expansion floated through the translators. Elias stood, his presence unassuming yet resolute. We've earned our place through sweat and survival, not inheritance. Cut us out and you'll miss what we bring. His words hung, simple and direct, but they barely dented the tide. As the vote commenced, electronic chimes echoing for each assent, Elias gripped the armrest. The count climbed, 78 in favor, 22 opposed, Earth's own vote a futile holdout. Gorvith's gavel fell like thunder. The motion passes. Earth is excised from the Concordance, effective immediately. Trade embargoes enforced. Delegates, this concludes the session. The chamber emptied in a hush, aliens gliding past without a glance. Terra's fists clenched. This isn't over. They'll regret underestimating us. Mira powered down her datapad, her optimism flickering. We adapt. We always have. Elias said nothing, staring at the dimming dome. Outside, the stars waited, vast and unforgiving. Humanity's isolation had just begun. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with starlight as the small vessel slipped through the asteroid field's outer edge, debris tumbling lazily in the void. Her crew, 3 humans, all that remained of the diplomatic mission, huddled in the cramped cockpit, faces etched with the strain of endless evasion. They're gaining, Cap, murmured Jax, her wiry engineer, eyes glued to the sensor readout. His fingers danced over the console, rerouting power to the thrusters. Jax was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but today his voice carried a rare edge of panic. Ilara nodded, not taking her gaze from the pursuing shadows on the screen. 3 Xyron interceptors, sleek and predatory, their plasma drives leaving faint blue trails. The vote had passed hours ago in the Galactic Assembly, Earth's provisional membership revoked, all human ships ordered to stand down or face impoundment. Regret the primitives meddling, the Council had droned, citing some fabricated breach of protocol. But Ilara knew better. It was fear, pure and simple, of humanity's unpredictable rise. Options? She asked, voice steady. Beside her, Lena, the team's linguist and unofficial morale booster, leaned forward, her braids swinging like a pendulum. We could sling around that big rock, the one with the magnetic anomalies, Lena suggested, pointing to a hulking asteroid on the NAV chart. Her wit usually lightened the mood, but now it was laced with grit. Might scramble their sensors long enough for a jump. Jack shook his head. Too risky. One wrong vector and we're paced. Better to hail them, bluff our way out. Say we're en route to a neutral port. Ilara waited. Bluffing had bought them time before, but the Xyron weren't known for patience. Their empire spanned sectors, built on rigid hierarchies and swift judgments. Denying them now meant escalation, perhaps a boarding party or worse, a tractor beam hauling them to some black site prison. A proximity alarm blared, sharp and insistent. The lead interceptor closed the gap, its weapons array glinting under the distant sun. Ilara's mind raced through contingencies, the weight of command pressing like the G-forces building in her chest. Helm, plot the slingshot, she decided, snapping the order. Jax, prep the decoy drones. Lena, get ready to broadcast that distress signal we doctored. Make it sound like we're Xyron allies in distress. The shuttle lurched as it banked toward the asteroid, engines whining in protest. Jax muttered under his breath, launching 3 small probes that mimicked their signature, scattering into the field like frightened minnows. On the screen, the interceptors hesitated, splitting to pursue the decoys. Lena keyed the comms, her voice shifting to a flawless Xyron dialect, laced with urgency. This is Vessel Krell 9, suffering core breach. Request immediate escort to Relay Station Bravo. Hostiles in pursuit, human sympathizers. Static crackled, then a response in clipped tones. Identity confirmed. Altering course. Stand by for tow. Ilara exhaled, but tension coiled tighter. The ruse wouldn't hold forever. As the shuttle whipped around the asteroid's curve, gravitational pull yanking them into a spiraling arc, she glimpsed the interceptors veering away, fooled for now. But in the rear sensors another signature bloomed. A larger ship, perhaps a Xyron cruiser, warping in from the assembly's orbit. They'd bought minutes, not hours. And Earth? Isolated, its fleets grounded by the vote's sanctions. Ilara's jaw set. Whatever came next, her crew would face it together. No surrender, no regrets. The asteroid loomed larger, a jagged monolith scarred by eons, and she steered them into its shadow, plotting the next desperate leap. The view screen ahead showed the sprawling docking bays of the Galactic Concorde Central Station, a colossal ring orbiting a nameless gas giant, its spires glinting under artificial suns. Her crew, 3 humans, all that remained of the diplomatic envoy, sat in tense silence behind her. Lieutenant Kai Ren, the engineer with a knack for jury-rigging fixes from scrap, fidgeted with a data pad. Dr. Mira Singh, the xenobiologist whose calm demeanor hid a sharp tongue, stared out a porthole at the alien vessels swarming like metallic insects. And Ensign Tomas Hale, the youngest, brave but impulsive, kept glancing at the comms panel as if willing it to light up with good news. They'd been summoned here after the vote, that disastrous tally broadcast across the stars. Earth, provisionally expelled from the Concord pending review. The reasons cited were persistent disruption and uncontrolled expansion, code for humanity's refusal to bow to the elder species' edicts on resource sharing. Ilara's mission was simple: plead the case by time, but the shuttle's approach vector had been rerouted twice already, a subtle sign of the welcome awaiting them. "Captain," Kai said, his voice low, "sensors are picking up elevated security protocols. Drones everywhere, and those Krell enforcers are patrolling the outer ring." Ilara nodded, her jaw set. The Krell, hulking reptilians with a monopoly on Concord security, weren't known for nuance. "Keep shields nominal. We don't want to give them an excuse." She tapped the console, pulling up the agenda. A closed session with the Oversight Committee, 5 representatives from the core worlds. No public forum, no allies invited. It felt like walking into a trap, but backing down wasn't an option. Earth needed this foothold or the isolation would strangle their colonies. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, clamps engaging like jaws. As the airlock cycled, a holographic message flickered to life. "Envoy from Sol System, proceed to Chamber 7B, unarmed. Escorts mandatory." Ilara stood, smoothing her uniform, the embroidered Terran eagle catching the light. "Remember, we're here to talk, not fight. But if they push, we push back, with words first." Mira adjusted her satchel of data crystals, her eyes narrowing. "Words won't sway the Vexery delegate. Their logic algorithms don't account for passion." The Vexery were silicon-based thinkers, cold calculators who tallied the votes' numbers without a flicker of empathy. Tomas snorted, holstering his sidearm despite the order. Ilara had allowed it hidden. "Passion's what got us this far. Without it, we'd still be scratching in the dirt." The airlock hissed open, revealing 2 Krell warriors, their scales iridescent under the station's harsh lights, plasma lances humming at the ready. One grunted, motioning them forward with a clawed hand. "Follow. No deviations." The corridor stretched endlessly, walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins, a Zorith design, meant to mimic organic growth. Ilara led the way, her boots echoing softly. Whispers filtered through translation buds. Other delegates gossiping about the human problem, tales of Earth's reckless terraforming projects that had accidentally boosted neighboring systems' economies but scared the bureaucrats. They reached Chamber 7B, a domed room with a central holodable projecting the galaxy's map, Earth's icon dimmed and isolated. The committee waited, the Vexery's angular frame of crystal lattices humming faintly, a feathered Etherean diplomat preening nervously, the squat, burly Grom from the mining clans, arms crossed, a ethereal Lyrian, its form shifting like mist, and the chair an ancient Thalorian elder, its tentacles coiling around a staff. "Envoy Voss," the Thalorian intoned, voice like grinding stones, "you come to contest the preliminary vote. Speak your piece, but know the Concord's patience wanes." Ilara stepped to the table, her team fanning out behind her. The hologram zoomed to Sol, highlighting contested zones. Asteroid belts humanity had mined for the greater good, sharing yields that the Vexery now claimed as overreach. "Esteemed committee, the vote overlooks facts. Earth's actions stabilized the outer rim. Without our interventions." The Vexery interrupted, its lattice flashing red. "Interventions that violated protocols. Your species expands without consensus, risks destabilizing the balance. Removal ensures harmony." Kai leaned in, whispering to Ilara, "They're ignoring the data. Look, the yields we shared prevented famine in 3 sectors." She nodded subtly, then raised her voice. "Harmony? Or stagnation? We've provided tech transfers, medical breakthroughs. Expel us and you lose that. The galaxy suffers." The Etherean ruffled its feathers, a sign of unease. "But the risks, your wars, your unpredictability." Tomas couldn't hold back, stepping forward. Unpredictability? That's innovation. We adapt. You lot sit in your rings, voting on shadows. The Krell guards shifted, lances whining higher. The Grom chuckled, a rumbling sound. Bold words, human. But boldness without control is chaos. Tension thickened the air, the holodeble flickering as arguments layered. Ilara presented Myra's crystals, projecting scans of a failing Zorith colony world, Earth's bioengineered algae the only fix. The Lyrian form wavered, intrigued, but the Vexery countered with projections of hypothetical disasters, algorithms spinning worst-case scenarios. As the session dragged, Ilara felt the weight of Captain Ilara Voss grip the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as it hurtled toward the Orion arm's edge. The view screen flickered with starlight, but her mind was on the encrypted message from Ambassador Hale. The vote had passed narrowly, Earth's provisional membership in the Galactic Concord revoked pending resource reassessment. It was code for expulsion, Earth's colonies isolated, trade routes severed, defenses stripped. She glanced at her crew, Lieutenant Rao, the wiry engineer from Mumbai, tapping furiously at his console, Dr. Lena Kaur, the xenobiologist with her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, monitoring the alien artifact they'd salvaged, and Jax, the grizzled pilot who said little but flew like the void owed him a debt. Scans show the anomaly ahead, Rao announced, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. It's expanding, faster than projections. If we don't get that data core integrated, it'll swallow the relay station whole. The anomaly was no natural phenomenon. It pulsed with the same synthetic signatures as the Concord's old war machines, relics from the schism wars that had nearly unraveled the galaxy a century ago. Earth's expulsion meant no backup from the fleet. They were on their own, racing to prove the artifact could stabilize it before the vote's ink dried. Jax, thread the needle. Get us in close. The shuttle bucked as Jax wove through debris fields, chunks of shattered moon rock tumbling past like forgotten dice. Lena leaned forward, her fingers tracing holographic readouts. The core's interface is compatible, but it's keyed to Vexery protocols. If we force it, we risk a feedback loop, could fry the whole ship. Rao shot her a look. And if we don't? That thing eats the station and the Concord writes off another sector. Earth's already on the chopping block. This could be the final nail. Ilara felt the weight of it, the earnest pull of duty that had driven her from Earth's dusty academies to the stars. No grand speeches, just the grind of ingenuity against impossibility. We adapt. Lena, walk me through a bypass. Rao prepped the emitters for a localized field. As they worked, the anomaly loomed larger, a swirling maw of distorted space, edges fraying like torn fabric, pulling in light and spitting back warped echoes. Jax's hands danced over the controls, the shuttle groaning under G-forces that pressed them into their seats. Holding at 5 clicks. Any closer and we're lunch. Lena's voice cut through the tension, laced with that cautious wit she wielded like a scalpel. Lunch for what? It's not alive, yet. But if it destabilizes further, it might birth something that is. She patched the core into the auxiliary systems, lines of code scrolling like ancient script. A spark jumped from the console, and Rao cursed in Hindi, slamming a panel shut. Feedback, he yelled. The lights dimmed, alarms blaring as the shuttle shuddered. Ilara's heart hammered. This was the backfire, the plan unraveling just as Hale had warned. The artifact's energy surged, clashing with their shields, and for a moment the view screen filled with visions. Fractured fleets, dying stars, the ghost of wars long buried. Divert power to stabilizers. Ilara barked, unstrapping and moving to Rao's side. Together, they rerouted flows, her hands steady on the overrides while his flew across diagnostics. Lena chanted adjustments, her free indirect thoughts bleeding into commands. If this works, it's because we're not giving up. If it doesn't, at least we tried. The surge peaked, then ebbed. The anomaly quivered, its edges smoothing as the core's signal took hold. Jax hooped, a rare crack in his stoic facade. We're in. Stabilizing at 80%. Ilara exhaled, sinking back into her chair. The relay station blinked back to life on scans, safe for now. But the cost lingered. Rao's arms singed from the spark, Lena's data logs corrupted. and a faint tremor in the ship's hull that whispered of deeper damage. Hale's next message would demand results, and this scrape was just the beginning, the galaxy's regret starting to form in the shadows of their triumph. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the auxiliary engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static bursts from the nebula's interference, but the sensor readings were clear enough. 3 Cragther interceptors closing in fast, their plasma lances charging with that telltale blue glow. Her crew, 12 souls strong, handpicked from the remnants of Earth's scattered fleet, watched her in silence, faces lit by the red emergency lighting. "Options?" she asked, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Beside her, Engineer Raj Patel hunched over his console, fingers flying across holographic displays. He was the cautious one, always double-checking schematics, but now his eyes burned with that quiet fire she'd come to rely on. "We can't outrun them in this soup," Raj said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Shields are at 40% after the last skirmish. But the nebula's magnetic fields are playing havoc with their targeting systems. If we vent the forward plasma coils, we could create an electromagnetic pulse, disrupt their sensors for a few minutes." Lieutenant Kira Voss, Ilara's younger sister and the ship's sharp-tongued tactician, leaned in from her station. "And fry our own NAV systems?" "Bold, Raj. I like it. But we'd be blind too. What's the play then? Hope they bump into an asteroid." Ilara glanced at the tactical overlay, the interceptor's vectors converging like predators on a wounded prey. The vote had passed 3 weeks ago, Earth's membership in the Galactic Concord revoked in a single, sweeping decree. No more trade routes, no alliances, just isolation and these opportunistic hunters picking at the edges of human space. The cost was already mounting, colonies cut off, supply lines severed, and now her ship, the Endeavor, limping home with critical cargo. Make it happen, Ilara decided, her brave streak overriding the caution screaming in her mind. Kira, plot a blind course through the densest part of the nebula. Use the stellar charts from the old probes, whatever we've got. Raj nodded, initiating the sequence. Alarms blared as the coils vented, a brilliant flash erupting from the Endeavor's bow. The ship shuddered, lights dimming as secondary systems kicked in. On the view screen, the Cragther ships veered wildly, their formations breaking like shattered glass under the pulse's influence. "They're firing blind," Kira whooped, her wit cutting through the tension. "2 missed wide, third one's got a lucky shot incoming." Ilara braced as a plasma lance grazed the hull, sparks cascading across the bridge. The Endeavor plunged deeper into the nebula's swirling clouds, a colossal gas giant's shadow looming in the distance. But the gamble had bought them time, and time was the one resource humans still had in abundance. Hours later, as the ship stabilized in the gas giant's outer rings, Ilara gathered her team in the mess hall. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and burnt wiring, a reminder of how thin their margins had grown. Raj nursed a bruised hand from wrestling a jammed panel, while Kira sketched evasion routes on a battered datapad. "That pulse saved our skins," Ilara said, sliding a mug of synthetic coffee across the table. "But the Concord's blockade is tightening. Sensors picked up a relay beacon back there, they're coordinating now, not just scavenging." Raj frowned, tracing a scar on his forearm from an earlier boarding attempt. "The cargo holds intact at least. Those fusion cores could power a colony for a year. If we make it to New Horizon Station." Kira snorted, her eyes narrowing. "The galaxy thinks we're done, sis. That vote wasn't just paperwork, it was a death sentence. But look at us, jury-rigging nebula traps like it's Tuesday. Humans don't fold." Ilara felt the weight of command settle heavier, the lingering consequence of their escape etched in the crew's weary postures. One wrong move, and the Endeavor would join the ghost fleet drifting in the void. Yet as she watched Raj and Kira debate modifications to the shields, his precision tempering her bold ideas, a spark of camaraderie reignited. The galaxy had underestimated them once. It wouldn't get a second chance. Deep in the nebula's heart, the Endeavor altered course, slipping toward a forgotten mining outpost on the gas giant's moon. There, if intel held, waited a rogue AI core smuggled from Concord Labs, human ingenuity's next gamble. But as proximity alerts pinged a faint signal tailing them, Ilara wondered if the hunters had adapted faster than expected. The chase was far from over. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the shuttle's engines vibrating through her bones as it hurtled toward the flickering anomaly. The view screen showed a swirling vortex of plasma and debris, the remnants of what the Galactic Council had dubbed the Exclusion Rift, their grand solution to the Earth problem. Vote passed, Earth isolated, humans cut off like a diseased limb. But now, with the rift destabilizing, it threatened to swallow entire sectors. And here she was, leading a ragtag team of human engineers and one reluctant alien liaison, racing to patch it before the galaxy paid the price. Status on the containment field? Ilara barked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The shuttle bucked against a rogue energy surge, lights flickering. Mira Chin, the wiry systems specialist, tapped furiously at her console. Holding at 47%, Captain. But these fluctuations, it's like the rifts fighting back. If we don't reinforce the emitters soon, it'll tear us apart. Beside her, Jax Harlan, the burly mechanic with grease-streaked arms and a perpetual scowl, grunted without looking up from his jury-rigged toolkit. Alien tech's too fragile. Told you we should have brought the Mark 7 drills from the colony ship. This council's gifts are about as reliable as a politician's promise. The alien liaison, a slender Zorathian named Creve, shifted uncomfortably in his harness. His iridescent skin pulsed with unease, bioluminescent veins glowing faintly blue. Your ingenuity is noted, humans. But the council designed this rift to be permanent. Interfering could be seen as sabotage. My people, save the diplomacy for after we survive, Ilara cut in, eyes locked on the approaching chaos. The rift loomed larger now, a jagged maw of violet light edged with crackling lightning, pulling in asteroids like breaths. She remembered the vote's broadcast, smug delegates from 100 worlds, tallying the yes to sever humanity's ties. Too aggressive, they'd said. Too unpredictable. Earth relegated to a backwater pocket dimension, its people left to fend for themselves. But the humans hadn't faded quietly. Whispers of breakthroughs had leaked through smuggling routes, drawing Ilara's mission from the shadows. The shuttle shuddered as they crossed the threshold, inertial dampeners whining. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropping. Ilara unstrapped and moved to the engineering bay, her boots magnetized to the deck. Mira, sync the field with the rift's frequency. Jax, get those emitters prepped. Creve, you're on sensors, tell me if anything big's coming through. Creve hesitated, his multifaceted eyes darting. Captain, the readings, there's movement inside. Not debris. Something organic. Before Ilara could respond, the shuttle lurched violently. A tendril of plasma lashed out, slamming into the port side. Sparks erupted from a console, and Mira yelped as her station shorted. Fields at 32%. We need to vent the overload, now. Jax was already moving, wrench in hand, prying open a panel amid the smoke. On it. Hold her steady, Cap. Sweat flew as he wrestled with fused circuits, his muscles straining against the G-forces. Ilara braced against the bulkhead, calculating their window, minutes, maybe less. The rift's pull tugged at the ship, a siren's call promising oblivion. Creve's voice cracked over the comm, incoming. Multiple signatures, council probes, but corrupted. They're arming weapons. Ilara's mind raced. The early plan had been simple. Deploy the human-modified stabilizers, seal the breach from afar. But the rift's instability had backfired, turning their approach into a gauntlet. No turning back now. Arm countermeasures. Mira, reroute power to shields. Jax, talk to me, how long? 2 minutes if I don't blow us up first, he growled, slamming a makeshift bypass into place. A low thrum built, the containment field flickering back to life. The probes burst into view on the screen, sleek, predatory drones twisted by the rift's energies, their hulls warped and firing erratic plasma bolts. One grazed the shuttle's wing, shearing off sensors in a burst of fire. Ilara dove for the auxiliary controls, fingers flying. Evasive pattern delta, now. The ship twisted, engines roaring as it dodged the barrage. Creve manned the turrets, his shots precise but hesitant, each blast a betrayal of his council's edict. "This is madness," he muttered. "Why risk everything for a species they cast out?" Ilara didn't answer, focused on threading the needle toward the rift's core. A probe locked on, its beam scorching the hull. Alarms wailed, breach imminent. Jax cursed, abandoning the emitters to seal the gash with emergency foam. "Cap, we lose another hit, we're done." In that heartbeat, Ilara saw it. The rift's heart, a pulsing nexus where human ingenuity might just bridge the gap. "All hands on my mark, deploy." The shuttle aligned, thrusters firing against the pull. The emitters launched, arcing into the maelstrom like arrows into a storm. But as they embedded, the rift convulsed, spitting back a wave of raw energy. The shuttle spun wildly, consoles exploding in showers of sparks. Ilara was thrown, her head cracking against the console. Darkness edged her vision, the last sight the Zorathian's wide eyes and Jax's outstretched hand. When she came to, the hum had steadied. Myra's voice, hoarse, field stabilizing, 60% and climbing. "But the rift, it's widening elsewhere." We bought. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console, her knuckles white against the flickering emergency lights. The derelict station's corridors echoed with the groan of failing hull plates, each shudder reminding her how thin the barrier was between them and the void. Her team, Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual squint, and Mira, the sharp-tongued xenobiologist, huddled in the control room, their breaths fogging the chill air. The vote had stranded them here light years from aid, after the Galactic Concordance deemed Earth's reckless expansion a threat and cut off all support. Now, with the station's core reactor on the brink, that decision felt like a noose tightening. "Power's dropping fast," Jax muttered, his fingers dancing over a jury-rigged panel. Sweat beaded on his forehead, catching the red glow from the alarms. He'd been at it for hours, splicing alien tech with human scraps, but the reactor's quantum coils, designed for a dozen species tolerances, were rejecting the patch. One wrong surge and they'd all be vapor. Mira paced, her boots clanging on the grated floor. "We can't just wait for it to blow. The Concordance left us with this mess. They think we're done. But if we stabilize it, maybe we broadcast a signal they can't ignore." Her voice carried that edge, the one that had gotten her kicked off 3 diplomatic missions. "Cautious?" "No." She was fire, always pushing. Ilara nodded, forcing calm into her tone. "Jax, what's the failure point?" She leaned over his shoulder, scanning the holographic readouts. The station orbited a gas giant's moon, a forgotten outpost the Concordance had abandoned when the vote passed. Earth's isolation meant no resupply, no evac. Just them, 3 humans against a machine built to outlast stars. "Overload in the containment field," Jax said, wiping his brow. "Their specs are too rigid, won't flex under stress. My bypass worked for a minute, but it's cascading now." He slammed a fist on the console, the impact sending a spark flying. The lights dimmed further, plunging the room into near darkness save for the console's glow. A distant rumble shook the deck, dust sifting from the ceiling vents. Ilara's mind raced. They'd come here on a hunch. Myra's theory that the station held data on the Concordance's hidden agendas, proof that the vote was rigged by rival species fearing human adaptability. But scavenging had triggered the reactor's failsafe, and now escape was a dream. "Adapt or die," Ilara whispered, echoing the old Earth adage she'd clung to since the fleet's dissolution. She straightened, eyes locking on Mira. "Your bioscans? Anything in the ecosystem outside that could interface? Something organic to buffer the coils?" Myra's eyes widened, then narrowed in thought. "The moon's methane blooms. They're silicon-based, flexible under pressure. If we harvest a sample, infuse it into the field generator." She trailed off, grabbing a toolkit. "It's risky. The blooms are acidic, could eat through the lines." Jack snorted, but there was a spark in his eyes. "Better than sitting here. I'll prep the injector. You two suit up." They moved like a unit, years of sim drills kicking in despite the exhaustion. Ilara and Mira donned the patched envirosuits, the seals hissing shut with a reliability that felt like luck. The airlock cycled, expelling them into the howling winds of the moon's surface. Crimson storms whipped across the icy plains, the gas giant looming like a bruised eye in the sky. Visibility dropped to meters as they trudged toward the bloom fields, tethers snapping taut against the gales. Ilara's suit HUD flickered warnings, corrosion imminent, but she pressed on, planting the probe into a writhing mass of tendrils. They pulsed with inner light, alive in a way the station's cold metal never could be. "Got it?" Mira yelled over comms, her voice crackling. She sealed the sample canister, the acid already etching faint lines on the exterior. But as they turned back, a crack split the ice beneath them. The ground heaved, a sinkhole yawning open from seismic tremors tied to the reactor's instability. Ilara lunged, grabbing Myra's arm as they slid. Her tether held, straining against the abyss. Below, jagged rocks gleamed in the faint light, promising a quick end. "Pull," she grunted, hauling with everything she had. Mira scrambled up, boots finding purchase, and together they collapsed onto solid ground, gasping. Back inside, Jax had the injector ready. The sample sloshed, volatile and glowing. "This better work," he said, voice steady as he fed it into the system. The reactor whined, a high-pitched keen building to a roar. Alarms blared, containment breach imminent. Then, silence. The coils stabilized, the organic buffer weaving through the quantum field like veins in stone. Lights flickered back to full, the station's hum returning to life. Ilara slumped against the wall, a grin breaking through. "We did it." But as the readouts cleared, a new alert pinged. Incoming transmission from the Concordance fleet. "Not rescue, enforcers come to erase the outpost entirely." The vote's regret was just beginning. Their survival had painted a target. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the jury-rigged engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge of the Endurance was a patchwork of flickering consoles and exposed wiring, lit by the harsh glow of emergency strips. Her crew, 12 souls, all that remained after the evacuation, huddled at their stations, faces gaunt but eyes sharp. Lieutenant Kai Ren, the wiry engineer with a knack for turning scrap into salvation, wiped sweat from his brow as he patched another power conduit. Beside him Dr. Mira Singh monitored the scanners, her fingers dancing over a tablet that showed the encroaching debris field like a swarm of angry hornets. "Status on the shields?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The Endurance had been adrift for weeks since the Council's decree severed Earth's supply lines, stranding them in the outer rim. What was meant as isolation had become a death sentence for hundreds of outposts like theirs, cut off, forgotten, prey to the galaxy's unforgiving void. Kai glanced up, his dark eyes reflecting the sparks from his welder. "Holding at 30% cap. But this asteroid belt's kicking up interference. One solid hit and we're venting atmosphere." He didn't sugarcoat it, never had. That blunt honesty had kept them alive through 3 system failures already. Myra's console beeped urgently. "Incoming transmission. It's the Vexor, that Krellian freighter we hailed last cycle. They're confirming the rendezvous, but their captain sounds jittery. Says the Council's patrols are sweeping the sector." Ilara nodded, leaning forward. The Krellians were opportunistic traders, not allies but desperation bred strange bedfellows. Earth's removal from the Galactic Accord had left a vacuum, resources rerouted, alliances frayed, and whispers of black market deals had reached even their isolated ears. If they could offload the Endurance's cargo of rare isotopes, mined from the very asteroids now threatening to pulverize them, they might buy fuel and a way home. Or at least a fighting chance. "Plot a course through the narrow gap," Ilara ordered. Kai reinforced the forward deflectors. "Mira, keep eyes on that patrol." The ship lurched as thrusters fired, slipping between towering rocks that tumbled lazily in the low gravity. A chunk the size of a shuttle grazed the hull, sending a shudder through the frame. Alarms wailed briefly before Kai silenced them with a swift override. "Deflectors ate the worst of it," he muttered, but his hands trembled as he sealed a microfracture. Hours blurred into a tense crawl. The Vexor appeared on scanners as a bloated silhouette against the starfield, its hull scarred from a lifetime of dodging enforcers. As the Endurance docked with a metallic clang, Ilara stood, adjusting her worn uniform. "You two with me. The rest hold the fort." The airlock cycled open to a haze of alien incense and the low rumble of Krellian voices. Captain Thornek loomed in the corridor, his scaled hide glistening under dim lights, forearms crossed in wary greeting. "Humans," he rumbled, tusks clicking. "Bold to call us after the vote. The Accord brands you pariahs now." Ilara met his gaze, unflinching. "Pariahs with isotopes your refineries crave. We need fuel cells and coordinates to slip the patrols. In return you get enough to power a fleet." Thornek's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of greed softened his posture. They moved to the cargo bay, where crates hummed with contained energy. Mira demonstrated the purity with a handheld scanner, her calm explanations cutting through the trader's skepticism. Kai hovered nearby, ready to improvise if talk soured. But as Thornek inspected the first crate, his comms unit crackled. "Patrol inbound, Council frigate 2 minutes out." His crew erupted in chaos, scales rattling. Ilara's mind raced. The Vexor was too slow to run with a full load, they'd be caught flat-footed. "We transfer fast, priority to your ship. We'll decoy them." Thornek hesitated, then barked orders. Crates flew across the docking tube on automated sleds. Kai jury-rigged a false signature on the Endurance's emissions, making it mimic a derelict probe. Mira fed evasion patterns into both ships' navs, her voice a steady anchor amid the frenzy. The frigate's sensors lit up the void like a predator's eyes. As it closed, the Endurance fired cold thrusters, drifting toward the debris field to draw fire. Thornek's ship powered away on pilfered fuel, crates secured. Blasts rocked the Endurance, shields flaring crimson. Kai sealed breaches on the fly, sweat stinging his eyes. "They're locking weapons. Evasive." Ilara snapped. The ship twisted through the asteroids, a desperate ballet. One bolt clipped the engines, smoke billowing. Myra's calculations bought them seconds, weaving between collisions. The frigate veered off, mistaking the tumbling rocks for a trap. It pursued shadows while the Vexor vanished into hyperspace. Drifting, battered, the Endurance crew tallied the cost. A crippled drive core, 2 injured, and fuel for one more jump, if they could repair it. Ilara slumped against a bulkhead, the weight of command pressing down. "We bought time," she said quietly. "But the galaxy's closing in. Next one's on us." Kai grinned through the grime. "Always is, Cap. Let's get to work." Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the bridge consoles a distant buzz against the roar in her ears. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, twisted remnants of the alien armada that had blockaded Sol's outer rim. Her crew, a ragtag mix of human engineers and the few allied defectors, watched in tense silence. "Status on the jury-rigged shields?" she asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Lieutenant Raj Patel, ever the cautious one, tapped furiously at his panel. "Holding at 60%, Captain. But if we push through that field too fast it'll shred us like paper." He glanced up, his dark eyes reflecting the glow of readouts. Wiry and precise, Raj had been the one to spot the flaw in the Galactic Council's blockade schematics weeks ago, a vulnerability born of their over-reliance on automated drones. Now, with Earth hours from total isolation, that flaw was their only shot. From the tactical station, Mira Chin leaned forward, her fingers dancing over holographic projections. Witty under fire, she cracked jokes during the escape from the Council's vote chamber, but now her face was all focus. "I've got a path, narrow as a needle's eye. We slingshot around the third asteroid cluster, use its gravity to mask our approach. But it'll cost fuel, lots of it." Ilara nodded, calculating the risks. The vote had passed. Earth expelled from the Galactic Concord, its resources seized to stabilize the core worlds. But the Council's fleets weren't just blockading. They were hunting, determined to erase any human resistance before it could spread. Her ship, the Aurora, was a converted freighter, no match for their cruisers, but ingenuity had kept them alive this long. "Do it." And Raj prepped the decoy drones. "If they bite, we buy ourselves time." The Aurora shuddered as engines flared, weaving through the void. Chunks of metal the size of shuttles loomed like silent sentinels, remnants of a battle the galaxy had already forgotten. Ilara felt the pull of acceleration in her bones, a reminder of the stakes. Back on Earth, families huddled in bunkers, rations dwindling, while the Council's edict stripped them of trade, allies, everything. This run wasn't just evasion, it was a message. Humans didn't fade quietly. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Contacts. Mira shouted. 3 interceptors, closing fast from Vector 7. Raj swore under his breath, rerouting power. Shields dropping 50%. They're targeting our engines. Ilara's mind raced. The plan had been solid. Slip past, rendezvous with the underground network on Mars' hidden outposts, rally the scattered human fleet. But the Council's hunters were adaptive, their AI predicting moves with eerie accuracy. Evasive pattern delta. Mira locked the countermeasures. The ship bucked, inertial dampeners straining as they dodged a plasma volley. A drone launched from their bay mimicking the Aurora's signature, drawing fire into the debris. Explosions bloomed silently outside, illuminating fractured hulls like fireworks in the dark. They're not falling for it completely, Raj warned, sweat beading on his forehead. One's breaking off, heading straight for us. Ilara stood, pacing to the view screen. The interceptor's sleek form cut through the field, weapons hot. No time for finesse. Vent the auxiliary tanks. Make it look like we're crippled. Raj hesitated, then complied. A plume of coolant erupted from the Aurora's side, freezing into crystalline shards that sparkled against the stars. The interceptor slowed, scanning, buying them precious seconds. Mira grinned fiercely. Gotcha. Firing railguns on their exposed flank. The shot connected, a kinetic slug punching through armor. The alien ship listed, venting atmosphere, but not before returning fire. A glancing hit rocked the Aurora, sparks flying from a console. Damage report? Ilara demanded, steadying herself. Minor hull breach, sealed, Raj replied. But comms are fried. We can't signal the Mars relay now. The bridge fell quiet, the weight settling in. Without comms, their warning to the outposts, about the Council's kill squads deploying ground forces, wouldn't reach them. Earth's fringe defenses would be caught blind. Ilara exhaled, staring at the drifting wreckage. The galaxy had voted to remove them, betting on human fragility. But here, in the cold expanse, they adapted. Patch what you can. We'll go silent, slip in under radar. They want regret? We'll etch it in their logs. As the Aurora limped toward the red planet's shadow, the crew worked in unison, hands blurring over repairs. The vote had isolated Earth, but it forged something unbreakable, a spark of defiance that no fleet could extinguish. Yet the cost mounted. Delayed aid meant lives lost below. Ilara wondered if the galaxy would ever see the error, or if humanity's grit would simply outlast their scorn. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair, the hum of the Endurance's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with data streams from the Allied fleet, Krellian cruisers holding formation, their crystalline hulls glinting against the nebula's purple haze. But her eyes were fixed on the anomaly ahead, a swirling vortex of gravitic distortion, the remnants of the Coalition's warp gate network, now a graveyard of twisted metal and flickering energy fields. Status on the probe, Lieutenant? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Reyes, her tactical officer, leaned over his console, fingers dancing across holographic controls. Still transmitting, Cap. But the readings are off the charts. Radiation spikes that shouldn't be possible post-collapse. If we push through, we might lose shields in under 30 seconds. Ilara nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The vote to isolate Earth had fractured the galaxy more than anyone anticipated. Now, with the Coalition's core worlds cut off, humanity's ragtag alliance was the only bridge left. They needed to punch through this mess to deliver the quantum relays, devices born from late-night labs on Mars, cobbled together with grit and whatever scrap they could salvage. Failure meant the Krellians' homeworld stayed dark, their people starving in the void. Helm, adjust course 5 degrees starboard. Keep us on the edge of the field. She turned to Dr. Harlan, the wiry physicist squeezed into the auxiliary station, his glasses perpetually fogged. Your team's mods holding? Harlan wiped his brow, glancing at the jury-rigged panel where human ingenuity met alien tech. The flux capacitors are sinking, but it's like threading a needle in a hurricane. One wrong pulse and we're confetti. A low rumble shook the bridge as the first tendrils of the anomaly brushed their hull. Alarms blared, short, insistent chirps that cut through the tension. Reyes swore under his breath. Incoming debris. Coalition frigate Husk, dead ahead. Ilara's hands tightened. Evasive. Fire thrusters, now. The Endurance lurched, inertial dampeners straining as they skimmed past a spinning girder the size of a skyscraper. Sparks erupted from a console, and a junior ensign yelped, batting at a smoldering panel. Harlan was already on it, barking orders to his assistant via comms, rerouting power with the precision of a surgeon. Shields at 60%, Reyes reported, his face pale but focused. That was too close. Cap, we can't take another hit like that. She knew he was right. The plan had been simple. Slip through the outer rim, deploy the relays to stabilize a microjump point, and link the fleets. But the anomaly's chaos had other ideas, warping space in unpredictable waves. Earth's exclusion had left these gates unstable, a cosmic joke on the bureaucrats who'd thought humanity too insignificant to keep around. Options. Ilara scanned her crew, their faces a mix of determination and exhaustion. These were the ones who'd stayed, pilots from the Belt, engineers from Luna, Krellian defectors who'd seen the error in the vote too late. Harlan cleared his throat. We could detonate a shape charge to clear a path. Use the anomaly's own gravity to our advantage. Create a temporary bubble. Reyes shook his head. Risky. One misfire and we accelerate the whole collapse. Ilara weighed it, the weight of a galaxy's fragile piece on her shoulders. The Krellians were counting on them. Without this link, their worlds would fracture further, the regret of that fateful vote echoing in empty halls. Do it. Harlan, coordinate with engineering. Reyes, target the debris field, precision bursts only. As the crew sprang into action, Ilara allowed herself a glance at the stars beyond the chaos. Humanity had been written off, but here they were, bending the universe just enough to prove them wrong. The Endurance shuddered again, diving into the heart of the storm, relays humming to life in the hold. One push, one clever twist, and they'd rewrite the stars. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her shuttle's command chair, the hum of the engines a low thrum against the void. Stars streaked past the viewport like fleeting accusations, each one a reminder of the armada closing in on Sol. Her crew, Jax, the wiry engineer with a perpetual smirk, and Mira, the sharp-eyed navigator whose caution had saved them more times than Ilara could count, huddled over the flickering console. The vote had passed weeks ago, a galactic decree to excise Earth like a tumor, citing humanity's reckless expansion as the cancer. But Ilara knew better. It was fear, pure and simple, of what humans could build from scraps. They're hailing us again, Mira said, her voice steady but laced with the edge of exhaustion. She tapped the screen, routing the signal. The face that appeared was Ambassador Krell of the Vexery Collective, tentacled, iridescent, and now an unlikely ally after witnessing the human fleet's improvised defenses at Vega Prime. Ilara, Krell's translated voice rasped through the speakers. The Armada's vanguard is 15 minutes from your position. Your ingenuity has bought time, but the Council won't yield. They've doubled the blockade. Ilara leaned forward, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean fearless. It meant pushing through the knot in her gut. We've got the prototype shield online, Krell. It's holding against their probes. But we need that data relay from your outpost, proof of the wormhole sabotage they hid. Jax snorted from his station, fingers flying over jury-rigged panels. Yeah, and if this shield fries like the last one, we're space dust. Tell your squid friends to hurry. Mira shot him a glare, but Ilara waved it off. Wit under fire kept them sane. The external challenge had escalated from a diplomatic spat to this. A resource-starved galaxy blaming Earth for the collapsing trade routes, when it was their own greed that had severed the wormholes. The stakes? Earth's isolation, billions cut off, or worse, annihilation if the Armada fired. Krell's image flickered. The data is en route, but my ship is under pursuit. One of your old freighters, repurposed? Ilara interrupted, a grim smile cracking her fatigue. Humans don't waste. The console beeped, a proximity alert. Enemy drones swarmed the sensors, sleek Vexery hunters designed for precision strikes. Myra's hands danced across the controls, plotting an evasive weave through an asteroid field. Incoming fire. Brace. The shuttle bucked as lasers scorched the hull, shields flaring blue. Ilara's world narrowed to the rhythm. Dodge, counter, survive. Jax patched in a countermeasure, launching decoys that mimicked their signature. Clever scraps of code born from late-night hacks on the colony outposts. Got him chasing ghosts, Jax muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. But the victory was Pyrrhic. The Armada's main force loomed larger, a shadow eclipsing the stars. Krell's voice cut through the chaos. Data received. Uploading now. It shows the Council's fabrication. They triggered the wormholes to monopolize the helium-3 mines. Ilara's heart pounded. This was it, the leverage. But transmission lagged, the signal bouncing through jammed relays. Mira boosted. Jax reinforced the shields. As the shuttle twisted through rock and void, a drone clipped their wing, sparks erupting in the cabin. Mira cursed, rerouting power, her cautious nature yielding to raw determination. We're through the field. Transmitting. The data burst forth, flooding the galactic net. Denials would come, but the truth was out. Earth's grid had exposed the lie. Yet as the Armada hesitated, Ilara spotted the cost. Their shuttle's engines sputtered, life support dipping. One more jump, and they'd limp home if home still waited. Krell's final words echoed, "You've turned the tide, human." But the vote's shadow lingers. Choose wisely. Ilara nodded to her crew, the weight of tomorrow settling like stardust. They had fought, adapted, but the galaxy's regret was just beginning to dawn. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her command chair. The hum of the bridge consoles a steady pulse against the chaos unfolding on the viewscreen. The alien armada, once a unified wall of dreadnoughts and fighters, fractured before her eyes. Streaks of plasma fire lit the void, not aimed at her battered human fleet but at each other. The Zenthari flagship, that colossal beast of iridescent hull and spiked turrets, belched smoke from a dozen breaches, its formation commanders turning their weapons inward. "They're imploding," murmured Lieutenant Kai Ren from Tactics, his voice laced with disbelief. Kai, ever the cautious one, had argued for retreat hours ago, his fingers now hovering over the shield modulation controls as if expecting the betrayal to reverse. But Ilara saw the shift in his posture, the subtle lean forward, the spark in his eyes. Grit had won out. Beside her, Dr. Mira Solon adjusted her neural interface, her witty barbs silenced for once by the weight of what they'd unleashed. Myra's plan, born from scraps of intercepted code and a human knack for turning data into disruption, had been a long shot. Hack the Galactic Concord's central vote nexus, expose the fabricated evidence that painted Earth as a galactic liability. But it wasn't just revelation, it was amplification. They'd seeded doubt with tailored viruses, whispers of corruption that preyed on the aliens' own fears of obsolescence. Now the viewscreen replayed the Nexus feed, the holographic assembly in chaos. The Vexari delegate, all tentacles and fury, accused the Krell of vote tampering. The ethereal Lyrans flickered in protest, their light forms pulsing with outrage. And at the center, the human ambassador, Ilara's old mentor, transmitted live from Luna Base, stood unflinching. "You voted to excise us because you feared what we represent. Ingenuity unbound. But isolation breeds stagnation. We've shown you the truth, your unity was a house of mirrors." Ilara's fleet, the remnants of the UNS Vanguard, her ship, the ISS Resolve, and 2 escort cruisers, held position at the edge of the Sol system. Resource shortages had plagued them since the vote. Fuel cells rationed, crew on half rations, the environmental hazard of micrometeor swarms from sabotaged relays turning every maneuver into a gamble. Their early plan to rally neutral worlds had backfired spectacularly when a rival faction jammed their signals, stranding them in the outer belt with failing engines. But Myra's adaptation, repurposing the debris field into a makeshift reflector array, had bought them time, bouncing their hack straight into the heart of the Armada's comms. A ping from the console, incoming transmission. Not from the aliens but from Earth. Ilara accepted, and her mentor's face filled a side panel, lined with exhaustion but alight with triumph. Ilara, the votes unraveling. The Concords recalling their fleets, Earth stays. But the cost. She nodded, throat tight. The lingering consequence hit like a gut punch. Scans showed the Zenthari dreadnought listing toward a debris cluster, its reactors critical. Escape pods jettisoned, but not all made it. Kai's hands flew across his board, locking onto survivors. Ma'am, we can tractor them in. It's risky, our bays are at capacity. Do it, Ilara said, her voice steady despite the ache. Brave didn't mean reckless. It meant choosing the path that echoed humanity's core. Mira shot her a glance, a half-smile breaking through. Clever move. Salvage their gratitude while it's hot. As the Resolve extended its beams, pulling fragile pods from the void, the Armada's infighting stuttered to a halt. Broadcasts flooded in, apologies, concessions, pleas for dialogue. The galaxy's eternal regret crystallized in that moment, not just the vote's folly but the realization that humanity's removal would have dimmed the stars themselves. Ilara watched the last pod secure, her crew moving with quiet efficiency. The tension eased, but the adventure's shadow lingered. The alliances reforged would demand vigilance, the scars of isolation a reminder of fragility. Yet in the bridge's soft glow, camaraderie bound them tighter. Earth endured, not through conquest but through the unyielding spark of those who dared adapt.